Hello again, me again. Okay, quick recap. So I've covered the black front cover with my handmade paper. I've actually taken it apart since the last video and I've just stitched around. You see on the inside, look, I've just stitched the cover of the original book to the handmade paper, and then I've clipped it all back together again. So then we went through and we clipped all our pages together, made sure that everything was all in line down the center spine, and made sure that everything was in place height wise as well, so that it was all centralized or where I wanted it to be if you have it offset, so that when I stitched all this together nothing should now move, because I've got 6 million paper clips in there. Okay, now as I said before, when you see other videos doing this, they tend to do the cover first and then do the signature. I'm actually going to do it all together, all in one fell swoop. Okay, now I've got my polystyrene foam pad. So when this, I ordered something and this was protecting what it was that I ordered, and I was like, oh, I know exactly what I'm going to use that for. So I use this as my my pricking thing, because I haven't got a technical name for it, so it's called a pricking thing. I've also got my pricking tool, pokey tool, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bend these a little bit. So I'm not going to have it flat, I'm going to have them slightly bent, and there are different ways of doing this. Now if we have a look, this doesn't fit on widthways or that way, so I'm actually going to put it on diagonally, because that's a longer piece of foam from there to there. So I'm just going to sit that on there. Now there's a 3-hole pamphlet stitch and there's a 5-hole pamphlet stitch. Now the 3-hole is the basic easy one to do out of the two. I would tend to use the 3-hole most of the time. I would use the 5-hole pamphlet stitch if I had lots of individual little pieces of paper. So you know how we've got, let's see if I can find it. I don't know if I'll be able to find it. With, you see that little piece there, the one that's only a small piece of paper. If I've got loads of those at the bottom or at the top, then a 5-hole pamphlet stitch will hold it all together better. All right. But I'm not doing the 5-hole one today, but basically you poke 5 holes down this center spine. The other thing is that because some people don't like using rulers to measure these bits out, they tend to use bits of graph paper, and then they keep that as a template to make sure that their holes are all in the right place. You can do that method if you so wish. Me, I'm just going to poke it. So I want one in the middle for definite, so I'm just going to eyeball it. Again, you can get your ruler if you so wish and measure from top to bottom and find the center point, but I'm just going to guess that it's about there. And I'm going to just hold these together here. Can you see where my hands are wiggling? So I'm just going to hold those together slightly angled. Right, so that's the kind of angle that I'm holding it at, and I'm just going to push through all of those layers, and I can tell when I pushed it right the way through, because this is standing up now, because it's resting in this me pokey thingy. And in fact, if I lift it up, can you see it's poking out the bottom there? Okay, so that's my first hole done. I'm then going to do one round about 1 inch down from this top edge here, and again I'm just going to eyeball it, but I'm going to do it within the space of where this envelope is. So I'm just going to do it round about there, and again I'm just going to push firmly through all the layers. Now again, this method works fine for a single signature, but it doesn't bode well if you try and do this with 2 or 3 signatures, so then you really do need to measure them out. But this is meant to be just a real quick method, and I poked right the way through again, so that's fine. Okay, so I've got all my holes, I've got my 3 holes now in place. I'm just going to put that to one side. So I just want to talk to you now about the thread that I'm going to use. Tidy up your workspace as you go along, Carol. Love being organised. Okay, thread. A lot of people say, what thread can I use to sew my signature together? You can use any thread you want, but you do need to think about a couple of things. One is the strength of the thread. So you need to make sure that it's a firm thread. So like a sewing cotton that you put on your sewing machine, it's too thin, way too thin. Even if you double it up, it's too thin. You could use, if you're an embroiderer, you could use Perlé 5 thread, because that's a nice thick thread. So in fact, if I just lay that down there, you can see the kind of thickness that it is. Right, so that's a Perlé 5 thread that you could use. You could use baking twine. Again, I'll show you the thickness of that. So you could use baker's twine. It's obviously a lot thicker, so you will need a bigger hold needle. The eye of the needle needs to be much bigger. This thread is button thread, and a lady was selling off a whole load of stuff from her father's old haberdashery store. So you can see now this looks quite thin, all right, but if I wrap a bit around my fingers, hang on, put that down there. If I wrap that around there and I pull, can you see? I'm really pulling. Ow. In fact, look, that's dug in my finger. Ouchie. It's not snapping. So that's a good strong thread. Now, I've not seen button thread for sale anywhere. You might have, so you might want to consider button thread. This thread came about from someone who was selling off a load of stuff, and this reel was in there. I haven't got a clue what it is. But again, it's the same as the button thread in that I've got to really tug at it to get it to snap, and as you can see, it didn't snap. This is actual linen thread that most bookmakers use. Just do a... So it's basically, it's a linen thread, but then it's been coated with some wax. Right, and the wax helps it to glide through the papers easier. Now this is quite firm and quite strong, right? So you could use actual linen thread, waxed linen thread, I should say. The other thing that you could use is dental floss. That's another thing that you could use to sew your signatures together. So I'm going to use my unnamed thread, and we want the thread length to be roughly, just unravel a bit, 3 times the length of our book. And I always add a bit extra on as well, just to be on the safe side. So 1, 2, 3, and a little bit of extra. Let me move all these out of the way. And then the other thing that I do is I've then got a little case of wax, some beeswax, slot it in there, and then I run it through the beeswax so that it's got a coating of wax on my thread, so it should help the thread to glide through all those papers much easier. So that is now coated a little bit like the linen thread was. Now in terms of needles to use, you want a really long needle. There are specialist needles, bookbinding needles, but if you've got a general sewing kit and you've got a really long needle in it, they tend to be called darning needles, and it's got a big enough hole for you to feed your thread through, then that should be absolutely fine. Okay, so, and I'm just doing this as a single strand of thread, I'm not doubling it up. So I'm going to poke my needle through the middle, and hopefully, yeah, see, it's gone straight through. Because I've kept everything angled and I've done it all together, it means I haven't got to keep searching for that hole. So I'll just pull it through there. Now I'm not going to pull it all the way through, I'm going to leave a piece here. Now what I could do is I could wrap it round the paper clip to just hold it, but I'm not going to do that now. Okay, and then I'm going to pop it through the top hole. Okay, so I've gone down into the middle and I'm coming back up at the top. Now I'm going to pull this thread, the middle one, just up and out of the way, so it opens up the hole a bit, and I'm going to go back down into the middle one, and then I'm going to pull it through. What you need to avoid is piercing the thread. Okay, so pulling it up and out of the way, pulling it up here, pulls it out of the way, opens up the hole, so it means that when you pop the needle down, then you should avoid piercing the thread of the thread of the thread. Oh dear. Now I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to go down into that bottom hole. There we go. Okay, so just to reiterate again, I've gone down into the middle hole, pulled it through, but not pulled it all the way through. Come back up at the top hole and pulled it through. I've then pulled this thread out of the way, and then I've popped the needle back down into the middle. I've taken it down across the back, and I've come back up at this bottom hole here. And now I can tie those two lengths of thread together. You do need to make sure that you pull on those threads, because we need to make sure that they're nice and tight, because there's going to be nothing worse than tying those together and then finding that your thread on the back is all slack. So always pull them in just a little bit. Don't pull them too hard, because you'll start to rip your paper, but make sure you pull them firmly. And then I'm going to just do a single knot, and I'm going to rest my middle finger on there whilst I do another one. And what I tend to do is I go through once like I would do for a normal knot, but then I pop the thread back through that loop again, so that I've got a double knot in one spot. And then I can remove my finger, and then I'm going to clip those threads off. Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt. So these threads are going to hide inside of this envelope. Now, if you haven't got an envelope in the middle like I'm going to have, you could attach little charms or beads or some circles of patterned paper onto the ends of these strings, so that they become a decorative part of the page. But because I've got the envelope, in fact, if I start to remove just some of these paper clips out of the way, when I glue that together, you can see, look, no one's going to know that they're all stitched together and it's inside there. All right, so if I now remove all of these paper clips, we can now start to get a real sense of what our journal is going to look like. Now it's all in place. And that was up to there. So there, look, you can see how many paper clips I used. Look, I used all of them. It's a lot of paper clips, isn't it? But it helps to keep it all in place. So now, ta-da! I present to you my journal. So if I just go through, and I can just make sure that I'm happy with everything, and that it's all definitely as I wanted it to be, and it's all in its right place. Nothing's moved. That one's moved a little bit. And you see how I've got a bit of a gap there now between the edge of this and the edge of that pattern. So that moved a little bit, but I can cover that over. No one will know. Shh, don't tell no one. Yep. That'll be glued down. Yes, happy bunny. That's moved a bit as well. because it's wider on this side than it is on the other side, but again, it doesn't matter. That's only if I was being real pernickety. Yeah, happy with that. Okay, so this is the basis of our journal. All right, so now this is going to be put to one side. The next lot of videos are going to have a different name, because when I initially started this, if you can cast your mind back that far, I said that this was going to be a journal where I showed you how to utilise some of the items that I put in the what's the word? Journal Essentials subscription pack. Now, most of these items many of you will have, or you can go and acquire, but I'm now going to go and do a series of more videos which relates to making items that will go into this journal when I've made them all up. So the next lot of videos are going to be called Journal Essentials. What am I going to call it that? Journal Essentials anyway, I'll let you know what I call it in the end, but it'll all be about doing tags and postcards and index cards and all those lovely bits and pieces that will then, once I finish doing all of those, I will then come back to this journal and I'll put all those things inside of here, and then you can see it absolutely complete and what I'm going to do with the cover. All right. Ooh. If you are still not confident about doing the sewing in bit of the signature, what I would suggest is get a greetings card. Get some scrap bits of paper, fold them in half, sit them inside the greeting card, paper clip them together, and have a practice that way. So then you're still poking your 3 holes, 1, 2, 3 holes into the card and all the papers. Have a go at stitching it together and see how it turns out. Don't feel as though you've got to go straight to your journal if you're not entirely sure. So have a practice first if that helps. Okay, right, I'm off then. I'm teaching tonight, so I need to go and crack on. Thanks very much for watching this particular section, and I'll see you on the other side in the next lot of videos, showing you how to make all the little bits and pieces that are going to go inside this particular journal. All right, thanks very much. See you later. Bye.